Las Vegas. So they've got an NHL team. The Oakland Raiders are now the Las Vegas Raiders. Rumour that baseball's going to get there. Don't know about the NBA basketball. Ben Gotz writes for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Nevada's largest newspaper, and he joins us. Welcome to the program, my friend.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me.
Stanley Cup champions, Las Vegas, the Golden Knights. How big a deal is this in Vegas?
Absolutely huge. I mean, this is a team that this city has just fallen in love with the last 6 years. I mean, obviously, I think when people think of Las Vegas, they think of the glitz and the glamour, the lights and all the gambling and everything. But what this team, I think, has done for a lot of people that actually live here day in and day out is give them a sense of identity that wasn't here earlier. So they've really brought the entire community together. So I think a lot of people here were just so thrilled that they got to celebrate their first championship last night.
Okay. So, and obviously, you know, the NBA was won around about the same time as well. Did anyone care about that in Vegas, or is it just all about the Knights?
Here, it's all about the Knights. There's no NBA team here yet. Obviously, because it's Las Vegas, I think there are a lot of people that probably had a financial interest in how the NBA finals were going to turn out. But in terms of the everyday local fan, they were all in on the Knights. They were so focused on following this team as it tried to achieve its ultimate goal. And there's thousands of course, in the building, and then thousands of them outside the building ready to celebrate when the final seconds finally ticked off the clock and the championship was officially theirs.
They seem to do it pretty easy, not just throughout the Stanley Cup final, but also throughout the playoffs. I mean, when they won big, this team.
Yeah, absolutely. They never faced elimination in the playoffs. They only trailed in one of their 4 series, and that was only after game 1 of the entire playoffs. So they've really had a great run throughout this postseason. I mean, the big thing is that this team has depth, right? Not only do they have star power, guys at the top of their lineup who are contributing, scoring big goals, all that stuff, but everyone was able to contribute. They could get goals no matter who they threw on the ice, which is really rare and really different compared to some of the opponents they were facing, where a lot of times the opponents, kind of lesser players down the lineup, just couldn't keep up with all the different guys the Knights could throw at them.
So what is the difference in between this team and the team in 2018 that lost to the Capitals?
Yes, this team has more of that top-end star power. So the team that the Knights went on that magical run with, their first year as a franchise as an expansion team, was kind of a collection of misfits. That's what they called themselves. They were guys who were, left exposed by the other teams in the NHL that the Knights picked up, and they were able to use that as kind of a chip on their shoulder, as motivation, thinking they were, overlooked or underappreciated, and really just gelled into this amazing team that was able to do so much more than anyone expected of them. And this team is just very different. They still have 6 guys that were on that first team, but this is no longer this big underdog story. I mean, these guys have had expectations for years now since making that great run, and they've added really premier players to try to take themselves from this cute story into this big hockey heavyweight. So one of those guys, they got Captain Mark Stone, their second year, who's been such a good player for them ever since he arrived, and an incredible emotional leader. They've got Alex Pietrangelo, who's, a number 1 defenseman that they never had, and he's been leading their blue line. And then a year ago, last season, they got the number 1 center, Jack Eichel, to really fit in the top of their lineup, and he was the leading scorer of this postseason with 26 points. He had so many great passes to set up goals for the Knights. So the top-end talent that is on this team is just unlike what the Knights had in 2018, and it's really what ultimately, I think, ended up putting them over the top.
Ben Gotz from the Las Vegas Review-Journal with us, and we're talking about the Stanley Cup win for the Vegas Knights. I've got a whole lot of questions for you, and please forgive me if they sound like a little bit dumb, but I just really want to figure out where this team, this franchise, this achievement sits in terms of all of American sport. Is it being celebrated by the NHL? Do they love the fact that an expansion side after just 6 seasons has won?
Yes, the NHL has really gotten behind the Knights because they've really brought a unique flavor to the league that wasn't there previously. mean, the Knights do things big and bold, right, just like their city. So their pregame entertainment is incredible, and that's led to a wave of improvements across the league. Like they've gone out and gotten stars that other teams, haven't been as aggressive in terms of willing to chase. So they've made, splashy moves that have made headlines across the NHL, which obviously gets the league excited because it's more attention for them, right? So I think they've really, in a very short amount of time, kind of catapulted themselves into one of the more recognizable, teams and brands in the NHL. So I think the league ultimately was pretty happy that they went on this run, that they were able to highlight, these players on a lot of these stories and just this franchise as a whole. And we've seen that throughout the last couple of years where Las Vegas has already hosted an all-star game for the NHL. They've been part of one of the league's big outdoor games. They're going to be part of the big regular season event in the NHL next year, the Winter Classic, where they play an outdoor game. In this case, it's going to be at a baseball stadium, the Seattle Mariners baseball stadium. They're going to put an ice rink there and have the Knights play the Seattle Kraken there. So they've really done a good job of highlighting the Knights. They've put a lot of focus on the Knights. And so I'm sure ultimately they were pleased that, the Knights went as far as they did and ultimately emerged with the trophy.
Now, I ask you that question because there's some suspicion, like the NBA, of course they'll never say it publicly, but Denver, not a basketball market, and the Nuggets such an unlikely team, and they don't have the posterizing, gun-toting superstar Instagram guys. They've got a guy who pretty much shuns the limelight, and there's superstar Jokic and that, and so that's why I asked you that question. So it's kind of an unfashionable place for basketball to win and be the world champions, but you reckon that Vegas, no, they love this. They love the bright lights.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think the NHL has been ecstatic about what the Knights have brought to the league since they joined 6 years ago. I mean, same with Seattle, which has now just completed its second season. I think they've done a good job, adding some extra pump, a little extra, glitz and glamour to the league's overall picture. And I think that's really helped the NHL's bottom line and made it a little bit more exciting for fans to be a part of.
Ben, who goes to games? Is it out-of-towners coming to Vegas, so they go there, they do a bit of gambling, they see a couple of shows, they go to a game, or is it locals that turn up?
It's mostly locals. I mean, this has been a very locally driven team since it came into existence. Like I said, the big thing for Las Vegas, even when I came here 7 years ago, it was a big city of transplants, right? Not a ton of people that were originally from here, and a lot of people that liked living here but didn't have any sort of kind of thing to rally around or sense of cultural identity. And so when the Knights came, they really gave people that. They gave people a sense of kind of purpose in the community, a symbol to get behind. And so locals have really embraced this team since the beginning. I think it's very different than the Las Vegas Raiders, the American football team that's here, and they moved from Oakland. And so you still see a lot of California fans drive into Las Vegas for those games, whereas with the Knights, yes, you still get, out-of-town fans coming in, fans from Canadian teams or Minnesota or Chicago that want to come to Las Vegas for a bit of warm weather and to see a hockey game. But it's not a majority of the seats being sold. It's still very, very predominantly locals that are filling the seats for this team. And that's what I think has made it so special for all these local fans to now have a championship to celebrate.
So, football, hockey, we hear that, that maybe the Athletics are coming. Baseball, is that still going to go ahead? And maybe, is there going to be an NBA team in Vegas eventually?
I would guess so eventually. There hasn't been any concrete rumblings as to when or if that might happen, but I wouldn't be shocked. And yeah, the Oakland Athletics are in talks to come here. That's actually being talked about in the legislature. Like as we speak today, there are bills being passed and negotiations ongoing, so it sure seems like that's on the right track to eventually come here as well. So Las Vegas as a sports town continues to expand, and you really have to point to the Golden Knights as leading the way. They were the first major league professional sports franchise to come into town, and everyone else has basically just been following their lead since then, including the Raiders, maybe the Athletics, and even the WNBA team, the Las Vegas Aces, who were champions last year.
And finally, look, just, I want you to put a perspective on this for us. We play rugby. Rugby's our major sport down here, okay? I don't know if you know too much about it. Kind of like our kind of equivalent to the NFL. Very tough, very physical sport. But let me read you a couple of things. So the star player for the Panthers fractured his sternum in Game 3. He played the last 2 games. The captain dislocated his shoulder, torn oblique, broken foot, won't be ready to start the season, but played the whole series. How tough are these guys?
incredibly tough. I mean, it is just insane what these guys are willing to sacrifice in order to get to the ultimate goal. I mean, Alec Martinez, who was a defenseman for the Golden Knights a couple years ago in the playoffs, played the entire time on a broken foot, where he didn't stand up basically between games. He would scooter in to the locker room, would somehow put on his skates, play the entire game, then scooter back home. I mean, it is just insane what these guys are willing to sacrifice and what they're willing to tough through to accomplish what's obviously been a dream since childhood for a lot of these guys. And even though obviously the Knights haven't given us their full list of injuries left, I will not be shocked if they have some guys that were dealing with significant aches and pains throughout this entire postseason. But they are willing to tough it out, and obviously for them, it's all worth it now.
Finally, and we saw Ovechkin and what he did after the Caps won their first one. He partied for about 3 years, it seemed. Is there going to be a parade in Vegas, and how long is this celebration going to go on?
There is going to be a parade in Vegas at some point. They have not officially announced it yet, but these guys are going to have to pace themselves. So I'm guessing it'll be towards the weekend, but these guys are going to enjoy this for sure. So many of them have worked their entire lives to get to this point. They've really worked hard with this franchise for years. So I'm going to guess that they're going to spend a good chunk of their summer celebrating. And you know what? Good for them. They've worked hard for it. They should enjoy it.